the difficulties and reality of crossing the Rhine in World War II. By early 1945, the Rhine River was no longer just a natural boundary. It had become a fortress, a symbol of Germany's last line of defense. Its swift currents and imposing width, combined with the heavy fortifications on its banks, made it one of the most formidable obstacles the Allied forces would face. For the Germans, the Rhine was the last great barrier protecting the heart of their collapsing Reich. For the Allies, it was the key to victory, the gateway to the final conquest of Germany. But crossing the Rhine was not merely a tactical challenge, it was a crucible that tested the ingenuity, resilience, and sheer courage of the Allied troops. The operation was defined by chaos, destruction, and extraordinary human suffering, making it one of the defining moments of the war's final year. The river as a natural barrier. The Rhine is not an ordinary river. Its width in many places exceeds 400 meters, its currents are swift and treacherous, and its banks are often steep and rugged. In 1945, these natural defenses were bolstered by meticulous German engineering. Bridges were mined and destroyed in anticipation of an Allied advance, turning the river into a chasm of separation. The western banks were lined with concrete bunkers, pillboxes, and artillery emplacements, creating a deadly gauntlet for any would-be attackers. Behind these defenses, the Germans stationed some of their most experienced troops, including remnants of the Wehrmacht and SS divisions. These men, battered but resolute, were determined to exact a heavy toll on the Allies. Every hill, every bend in the river, and every bridge was turned into a potential death trap. The Allies knew what lay ahead. As they prepared for the crossing, soldiers whispered stories of the Somme and the Marne, echoes of World War I's grinding slaughter on river lines. Yet, this time, the stakes were even higher. The Rhine was no mere military objective. It was a psychological and symbolic threshold. To cross it was to breach the core of Nazi Germany, the challenge of coordination. The Rhine crossing was not a single event, but a series of meticulously planned operations spanning hundreds of miles. Commanders like Bernard Montgomery in the north and George Patton further south led simultaneous efforts to overwhelm the German defenses. Each sector required precision coordination between infantry, engineers, artillery, and air support. Massive artillery barrages preceded the crossings, unleashing tens of thousands of shells on German positions. The roar of these bombardments was deafening, shaking the ground and turning the riverbanks into a haze of smoke and fire. For hours, Allied forces pounded suspected strongpoints, seeking to weaken the enemy's grip. But when the artillery fell silent and the infantry moved, they discovered the grim reality. Many German defenses had survived. The defenders had constructed their fortifications with reinforced concrete, often concealed deep within the natural contours of the land. Artillery shells cratered the earth, but often left bunkers intact. The Germans emerged from their underground positions and unleashed a storm of machine gun fire, mortars, and artillery on the advancing troops. The human ordeal. For the soldiers tasked with crossing the Rhine, the experience was harrowing. The crossings often began under cover of darkness, with troops boarding fragile boats made of canvas and plywood. These boats, barely seaworthy under ideal conditions, were no match for the icy currents and the torrent of German fire. As soon as the boats left the riverbank, they became targets. Machine guns raked the water, shredding boats and men alike. Artillery shells exploded around them, sending geysers of water into the air and capsizing entire groups. Soldiers who fell into the freezing river found themselves fighting not just the enemy, but the elements. The currents dragged them downstream, while the cold sapped their strength. Many drowned before they could even reach the far shore. Those who made it across faced an equally grim reality. The eastern banks of the Rhine were often little more than muddy quagmires, offering no shelter from the relentless fire. Soldiers scrambled for cover in craters or behind the wreckage of vehicles, while engineers worked frantically to assemble pontoon bridges. The engineers were the unsung heroes of the operation. Under constant fire, They hauled massive sections of pontoon bridges into place, braving the cold waters and the constant threat of artillery strikes. Every bridge was a lifeline, allowing tanks, trucks, and reinforcements to cross, but they were also prime targets. German artillery gunners zeroed in on these structures, destroying them as quickly as they were built. The capture of the Ludendorff Bridge. One of the most dramatic moments of the Rhine campaign occurred at Remagen, where American forces captured the Ludendorff Bridge intact on March 7, 1945. The bridge, a massive steel structure spanning the river, had been rigged with explosives by the Germans. When the US 9th Armored Division stormed the area, the demolition charges failed to destroy the bridge completely, allowing the Americans to seize it. For 10 days, the Ludendorff Bridge became the focal point of intense fighting. German artillery and aircraft launched desperate attacks to destroy it, while American engineers worked tirelessly to reinforce the structure. The bridge eventually collapsed under the strain, killing dozens of engineers in the process, but not before thousands of Allied troops had crossed into Germany. The capture of the bridge was a turning point, providing a critical foothold on the eastern bank of the Rhine. The equipment and logistics. The success of the Rhine crossings depended heavily on the ingenuity of Allied engineers and the effectiveness of their equipment. Amphibious vehicles like the DUKW played a vital role in transporting supplies and troops across the water. Sherman tanks modified with flotation devices attempted to swim the river, though many were lost to the currents or enemy fire. The sheer scale of the operation required immense logistical coordination. Artillery pieces, anti-aircraft guns, and fuel had to be transported across the river, often under fire. Pontoon bridges, though vulnerable, became the backbone of the crossing effort. These temporary structures were assembled piece by piece, often in the face of withering German resistance. The aftermath. The crossing of the Rhine was a decisive moment in the war. Once across, Allied forces advanced rapidly into Germany, capturing key cities and encircling German divisions. The river that had once been Hitler's shield became the Allies' gateway to victory. Yet the cost was staggering. Thousands of Allied soldiers were killed or wounded during the crossings, and countless others were scarred by the experience. The psychological toll of fighting on the river, of seeing comrades drown, of enduring relentless fire, of facing an enemy determined to resist to the bitter end, left an indelible mark on those who survived. For the Germans, the crossing of the Rhine marked the beginning of the end. Their defences had been breached, and the Allies were now poised to deliver the final blow. The crossing of the Rhine was more than a military operation. It was a test of human will. It showcased the ingenuity, determination, and resilience of the Allied forces, but also the devastating human cost of war. In the annals of military history, it remains a symbol of both triumph and tragedy, a moment when bravery and sacrifice overcame the seemingly insurmountable.